Greetings, good morning, and welcome to Mind the Moment. This, my friends, is our coffee house in the cloud, a place to gather, build community, get centered, and explore all the possibilities of this most present moment. It is July 7th, 2020, which has been dubbed Blackout Day by a group calling itself the Blackout Coalition. Blackout Day 2020 is a one-day social media campaign encouraging people to avoid purchasing anything as a way to call attention to the many hurdles faced by Black-owned businesses and Black entrepreneurs in particular. The group suggests that if you need to purchase something today, that you make every effort to do so from a Black-owned business. So from a mindfulness perspective, campaigns like this one offer an excellent opportunity to contemplate where disparities might figure into activities even as mundane and commonplace as buying and selling, and to examine a viewpoint like the one Winston Churchill expressed in 1945 when he suggested that, quote, the inherent vice of capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessings. It also allows us to bring our attention to the other ways we might spend our time apart from consuming goods. In a tweet, the Blackout Coalition suggests that you might instead spend time today consuming experiences. They posed a few activities that you could do as an alternative to spending money, including connecting with an elder, researching your family tree, taking a walk outside, hosting a family game night, or voting if you happen to be registered to vote in New Jersey or Delaware. A generation after Winston Churchill, Fred Hampton suggested, quote, we don't think you fight fire with fire best. We think you fight fire with water best. We're going to fight racism, not with racism, but with solidarity. Even if one doesn't choose to take part in Blackout Day, we can still spend time reflecting on the little and big acts of solidarity available to each of us. So I'm John Roberts from Harvard Pilgrim Health Care's Mindfulness program, and instead of spending money, I would much rather be spending time with Greg Topakian, a longtime educator who has most recently been using his educator's gifts to teach people about mindfulness. Good morning to you, Greg.
Good morning, John. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. In just a moment, I will hand things over to you, Greg, to lead us into and then lead us in a 10-minute guided meditation. From there, we'll get into some Q&A before wrapping it all up by 9 a.m. Now, at the bottom of your screen, you may very well have noticed the option to open up a chat box. Please use that chat box to type in any questions or comments that you might have. We'd love to know what's on your mind today. And towards those ends, Greg, is there anything that you would like to ask the folks at home to comment on as we're getting started today?
Yeah, I would, John. For so many of us who are aware of mindfulness or practice mindfulness, we're often wondering, how do I tap into mindfulness in a time of need in my real life? And so my question to participants today is, what do you do to help turn the mind to the mindfulness station when you're in a time of need, when you're a little bit pressed for whatever reason?
All right, so while folks are typing, allow me to issue a big thanks to everyone for taking the time to be with us and with each other this morning. Now, please note that only Greg and I will be able to see anything that you type, and if we don't read your particular question or comment out loud, please know that we do read and appreciate them all. Before we close, I will point out some other ways that you can keep in touch with us too. Greg, I love this. I love the idea of tuning in. For some reason, I actually, my mind tends to go to the radio as an image of mindfulness and how there's a lot of static out there, but if you can get the tuning just right, then you can intercept what's coming in. So some folks commenting. Well, somebody says, I wish I would think to do that. So I think that's just a general sense of, that intention to be mindful. Someone says, I try to think of myself as being outside of my body, if that makes any sense. It does to me. Somebody says, I try to focus on my feet. Now, that's actually interesting because I know a lot of instructors suggest that focusing on a part of the body away from the head, from the brain, can be very helpful.
The body. Yeah.
Someone says, as soon as I notice I need some mindfulness, at which point this person might already be down the rabbit hole of thought, she says, I stop and take notice of what is happening. Thoughts, sensations, breath. Someone says coloring, which is something that I recently rediscovered as an adult, and yes, and just and some general agreement with all of the above. Okay, so that's a great selection, I think. So Greg, with that, I think let me turn it over to you to get us started today.
All right, thank you, John. Well, great responses from you folks out there, and may we remember to tune into mindfulness. The thing about when we practice is that the mind becomes more used to going there automatically. So the more we practice mindfulness, the more the mind begins to naturally follow that path in a time of need. But not only that, we begin from practice to know how to get there. We know how to remember to ground ourselves in our feet, or to turn to coloring, or whatever it is. We each have our key to that door. So what I'd like to do today is I'd first off like to remember, what is this mindfulness thing all about anyways? When we say we want to be mindful, what is it that we say we want to be? And then do an exercise that helps us tap into that in a time of need. So what do we mean by mindfulness? What we mean is being awake, being aware of what's happening to us and immediately around us in the present moment. So sensations in the body, knowing those. Thoughts percolating in the mind, seeing that, hearing those voices. Impulses to act or speak in a certain way, our mood. So the first aspect of mindfulness is just being in touch and knowing what's happening in this vehicle right here, mind and body. The second aspect is knowing that we're knowing it. In other words, we're aware that we're actually choosing to pay attention. So we're consciously directing our attention somewhere. It could be to the body, it could be to thoughts, it could be emotions, attempting to sustain that attention there. And when the mind wanders, to choose to bring it back. And the more often we do that, the more we reinforce this new habit of mind, which is to be awake and aware. And the third feature of mindfulness is to have a spirit of engagement to whatever is prominent in the mind that is open and flexible, rather than resisting or fighting it, or striving to achieve something, or holding something and grasping something. Can we simply be with it? So there's these three aspects: awareness of what's happening, knowing that we're aware, and being open to what's happening in the moment with a spirit of, I'll call it a kind curiosity. Okay, so what can help us tap into that when we only have a moment or two in our day, maybe in between meetings or so forth, or waiting somewhere? And so what I'd like to do with folks is introduce and guide a practice called the 3-minute breathing space. 3 minutes is this practice, and we're going to do it twice. The first time we do it, I'll be just filling in the gaps a little bit. So it will take a little longer than 3 minutes, maybe 7 or 8 minutes. And hopefully some of the suggestions that I give resonate with you. And then when that's over, then I will start the clock again, and we'll just do it for 3 minutes, and you'll be more on your own for that, just to get a flavor for what that feels like. Okay, so let's start. So the starting point for any formal practice is to check in with the body. So you might notice the weight of your head on your neck, the neck on your shoulders, whether your spine is straight, relatively straight. You might imagine a little string or wire pulling from the crown of your head straight up to lengthen that spine. Relaxing your shoulders so your shoulders are down while you're lengthening the spine. Breathing into the upper torso, the chest and lungs. Hands on your lap, or the hands touching, the palms touching. Noticing your buttocks on the seat of the chair, feeling that sensation. If you're sitting, the knees are bent, the feet on the floor, feeling the feet. A posture of simple dignity, a posture that says, I'm awake right now. I'm paying attention. I'm noticing what's happening in this mind and body. Okay, so there are 3 parts to the 3-minute breathing space. Each normally would take 1 minute. And the first part is that we begin by checking in to what is happening in this present moment. So what does that mean? Well, let's first check into our bodies. You might do a quick scan of your body. What part of the body is most prominent to you right now? Where are their sensations most vivid? Could be the back, the shoulders, the legs, the head, the stomach. There might be pleasant sensations, there might be unpleasant sensations. But just to notice, what is my body telling me right now? And then we move to the second dimension of our being alive in this moment, and that is to thoughts percolating in the mind. So what words or images do you see in the mind? Do you hear in the mind? Perhaps it's something like, oh, wow, I have so much to do today. Why am I sitting here right now? Or it might be, oh boy, I really need this. I hope I learned something new today. Look at that blue sky. Whatever it is, can we be aware? Can we notice the thoughts? Not necessarily believe the thoughts wholeheartedly, but just see them racing through the mind, coming and going. Another dimension of our being in this moment is what impulses do we feel? Do we feel a certain compulsion to speak a certain way or to behave a certain way? Can we turn our attention to that? Very important in daily life to notice, how are we being impelled? How are we being pushed? Because if we can notice, we have that much more capacity to actually assess whether it's a skillful action. And finally, another dimension of our being, what's our overall mood? Am I content? Feeling a little anxious today, a little sad, worried, joyful, peaceful? What's the truth of this present moment? So the first part of this 3-minute breathing space is simply what I call a mindful check-in. The next part is where we begin to cultivate that spirit of mind which is open and flexible, kind and curious. And we do that by inviting our mind now to settle on one place, one target for yourself. Sometimes we call it an anchor. It could be the breath. It could be your feet. It could be the hands on the lap. It could be sound. And so we're looking to just nudge that mind into resting at that one place. Not fighting with it, not excessively striving, gently nudging just to be with the breath, or just to feel those feet on the floor. Not thinking about these targets, but feeling them. What sounds do I hear? How does the breath feel in the body? And the third step of the 3-minute breathing space is to now open up the field of awareness, to move sequentially from one resting place to the next. So you might, if you're familiar with the body scan, move from your feet to your ankles, to your calves, to your knees. And as the mind moves, to rest at that one place for a moment or two. Approach whatever sensations are arising there with a spirit of allowing them, being kind to them, open to them. If you'd like to move your arms in front of you in a mindful stretch, just turning attention to the arms as they raise. That could be part of this third step as well. Moving attention from one target to another with a spirit of openness, with a spirit of approaching. So that's the 3-minute breathing space. And now I'm going to let you engage with it on your own, and not to be rigid about it, but I'll prompt you at the end of every minute. And if you're in a good place, you might then move on to the second step or the third step when I announce to you that a minute has passed. So again, reset your posture. And here's the ringing of the bell, and the first minute begins for the mindful check-in. Sensations, thoughts, impulses, moods. How is it now for you? What's happening in this present moment? And that's 1 minute. And if you're in a good place, to now move to the second step, where you're directing the mind to one target, one resting place. the breath, or the feet, the hands, sound, your buttocks on the seat of the chair. And attempting to sustain attention there. Noticing the sensations as they arise and pass away. And if the mind wanders, to notice and smile. And simply bring it back to that target. Begin again. And now the third minute, we're opening up the panorama of our awareness. So we're consciously moving our awareness from one target to the next. Your choice. Pausing for a moment, noticing sensations, arising, passing away, moving to the next. And I'll count backwards from 3. And when I get to 1, I'll invite you to reopen your eyes and come back to the room. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, thank you for that, Greg. And I feel like you actually answered in that practice a question that a lot of people have, which is, can I really effectively do a formal meditation in 3 minutes? Is that enough time? And I think that you gave us a really good format for thinking about that. So for the folks watching at home, I want to make sure that everyone feels very welcome to ask Greg any questions you have using the chat box. While you think and type, there's a couple questions I would love to ask Greg myself. So, Greg, because we were talking about this earlier, I know this particular practice comes from MBCT, or mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. I'm wondering if you would mind just explaining a bit about what that approach is.
Right. Great question, John. I'd love to. Mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is a relatively new stream of mindfulness. It got developed almost 30 years ago by a group of cognitive psychologists. And the aim of it is to recognize that for most of us mere mortals, as we're living life together, sometimes the moments are pleasant and joyful, and sometimes they're difficult. And when they're difficult, we're vulnerable to emotions like sadness or irritation, or a little fear or anxiety. And to acknowledge that these are normal emotions. But the question is, what happens next when we feel those emotions? Because for many of us, when we're experiencing a low mood, the mind associates low mood with negative thoughts about the world not being safe, or that I'm inadequate, or something like that. And if we're not aware of how the mind associates low mood with negative thoughts, we can very quickly move down a spiral. So mindfulness-based cognitive therapy was this melding of mindfulness with cognitive therapy being the psychology of thoughts, to help us become more aware of our thoughts, and to offer very concrete practices, so that rather than fight with the thoughts, or rather than deny or repress the thoughts, we can learn to be with them approach and allow them to be there without getting carried away or controlled by them. And the 3-minute breathing space is the introductory practice to their approach. And there are a number of other practices which take off from there.
Well, so that's an interesting point there. So you mentioned that, or I have the sense that this is often used as a clinical intervention.
Yes.
Actually, it's fortunate that for those of us who like to geek out over research studies, MBCT has been widely studied, and it offers an embarrassment of riches. So peer-reviewed journals have reported that these
very evidence-based. Yeah, very evidence-based. Yeah.
Decreases in anxiety, stress, distraction, depression, including potentially chronic depression. So that's great news for people who are pursuing this as a clinical intervention. I'm wondering though, is there a place for these techniques, even in the toolkits of practitioners like ourselves who are not specifically looking for those sorts of outcomes?
No, well, absolutely. Because again, I'm gonna make the bold assumption that for each one of us participating today, life does not go the way we want it to every single moment. I'm going to take a risk and put that out there. And so when it doesn't, right, and this just means we're normal human beings, the question is, what happens next? And it's quite normal to have a wide range of feelings and reaction to things not going our way. It doesn't have to be anxiety and a full-blown depression, but it can be shame, it can be guilt, it can be irritation, can be frustration. Again, I'm going to make a bold assumption that everyone participating in this group today has some experience with at least one of those emotions. And so again, the question is not to demonize those emotions, but can we bring awareness to them? Now, not only that, it's not only challenging emotions, but what if the moment is pleasant and joyful? What about being there 100% for that, rather than saying, oh, this isn't as good as last year when I was in San Francisco. No, look at that blue sky. I want to be there 100%. And the mindful check-in and noticing how the mind is wanting to travel to here or there, the past or the future, and bringing it back, that's useful even when there are positive emotions in our moment's experience. So you don't need to be suffering serious anxiety or depression. This is a practice simply about being more awake and how we can access that even when we only have a minute or two.
Well, so this is great because it leads into a question that came in the chat box, Greg, and somebody who I think is sort of referring to like a low-level sense of anxiety. The person writes, when feeling anxious and restless during meditation, what is the best way to handle that?
Well, good question. And again, everybody's different and there's no magic bullets here. But I'll speak as someone who anxiety is a frequent guest to my mind and body. So let me admit to that. So this is not an academic response. This is something that works for me and for other of my friends who experience anxiety at times. And that is to drop into the body. Try to bring awareness to some part of the body and to focus on the sensations of the moment. Because a good part of anxiety is getting wrapped up in the stories that we tell. Oh my God, it's only going to get worse. It's going to last forever. I'm going to fail next time too. We want to notice that when it arises and say, okay, I see that you're there. I hear you, but I don't need to follow you. Right now, I'm going to take a chance and transfer my awareness to something safe, like my breath, or something safe like my feet or my hands on my lap, and just pay attention to present moment sensations. Now that's the starting point. There are a lot more techniques, but the first point is bring the attention to present moment sensations of the body, not to imaginings of what might happen in the future.
Oh, this is such a rich vein, Greg, and so it pains me to have to move us towards our closing moments. But we'll bring you back. We'll have a more discussion soon, I hope. So, folks, we'll be back with you every Tuesday and Friday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can find the links to these sessions and other resources at our main site at harvardpilgrim.org/mindfulness. If you have questions for our experts that we weren't able to get to, please send them to askmtm@harvardpilgrim.org. I will get them answered. Or feel free to leave me a voicemail at 617-509-7047. Now, you can check out how we're keeping ourselves busy on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/mindthemoment. And you can rewatch this session, older sessions, and introductory sessions on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/mindthemoment. All right, so Greg, I'm so grateful to you for sharing your wisdom and guidance with us this morning. And I remembered that you were going to close us out with a little bit of compassion. So if you would not mind.
Thank you. And this will just be a minute or two, folks, in case you're needing to move on. So again, just bringing attention to the body and to this present moment. And so for us mere mortals, all of us imperfect beings living in this world of uncertainty with a whole host of feelings, disappointment, panic, a little irritation. May you feel safe and protected. May we all feel safe and protected. May we feel healthy. May we feel the love and support of all the people who care for us. May we learn to offer kindness to ourselves and compassion, patience when we're in need. And may we come to experience this moment of peace. And finally, may we all make a noble effort to work with our hearts and minds to help create a world with social and racial justice, where all beings, all of them, are treated with respect and dignity. Thank you for your practice. Nice to practice with you. Be well. See you at another time.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everyone. We will see you soon, I hope. Have a momentous day, everyone.